My name is Desai. I am a practice leader in consumer and retail in Praxis Global Alliance. We are the fastest homegrown management consulting firm in India and do a lot of work with consumer retail brands around their omni-channel strategy, brand strategy, go-to-market, etc. Poppy, over to you, and perhaps we can go in that order.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Poppy Marshall-Lawton. I'm the Vice President of Laura Ashley. I'm very happy to be here from London today. Laura Ashley is a global lifestyle brand focusing on both home and fashion, and we work in a licensing model to expand our brand globally.
Hi, my name is Singh. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer for Ace Turtle. We started about 10 odd years back as a SaaS tech company, and we pivoted about 3 years back to bring international brands in India and scale them using technology.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Anand Baldawa. I run thinKitchen. We bring about 40 odd international kitchen brands to India and distribute them online, offline, and to the hospitality segment. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. I'll introduce the session. We are basically discussing around why India has become a market of choice for foreign brands. In India, as you all know, the retail market in India is growing very fast. Today, it is about $850 odd billion, and it is broadly set to double over the next 5 to 6 years. This also results in a lot of demographic dividend and a lot of opportunity for foreign brands, which is perhaps why it has become a very important market for global brands. Today, we'll focus around things like why they are coming to India, what are their strategies like, what channels do they operate out of, and overall, what are the challenges they face and what we can learn from these three panelists on the stage. I think perhaps I'll start first with Poppy. Given you are in the process of entering the Indian market, I want to understand your thought process around why India and why now. Why is it the right time to sort of enter the Indian market?
Yeah, so I think India for Laura Ashley has always been a very interesting territory, but in terms of why now, Laura Ashley, the brand, has gone through a transition in its own right in the last 4 years, and we have made sure that we are a British brand and we have re-established the brand within the UK market. But our strategy is to enter really exciting emerging markets, and India is simply one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And it's a really exciting economy. It's really exciting for us as a brand because the kind of growing population and that really active consumer in that kind of 25 to 35-year-old market, those people who may be looking to buy their first home, you know, newly married couples. And for us, that really is kind of the target market for us, those people who are really investing into homewares, but people who have also kind of got a real appetite for global trends. And the Indian market and the Indian consumer they're exciting and they're interested in the world. And some other markets are slower to adopt global trends, whereas we see kind of for India that it's a really fast-moving market and really exciting. And for us, our biggest category as well as a brand is home textiles, and India is the home of textiles manufacturing.
So on that note, and I'll come Anand to you next, the 25 to 35 age group that Poppy was mentioning, and what are the other sort of segments that you see growing? Is it age group? Are there cities that are growing? Are there income segments?
Sure. I think this is the best part about India. I think each of the aspects you're talking about, be it the age group, be it the city location, or be it the demographic, they're all interested. So if you have to look at the kitchen space, which is what we are in, it was the mother or the mother-in-law making the decision for the buying earlier on, and now it is the daughter or the daughter-in-law. So that kind of is changing. If you're looking at the cities, it's not just the metro cities, it's not just the tier 1 cities. We've seen orders come in from all corners of the world. Some of them are tier 3, tier 4 cities. And I think the other part being the demographic perspective, or the reason all of this is happening is simply because of the awareness that's happening around international brands in India. People want to live a slightly more aspirational lifestyle, so that's sort of helping us.
And perhaps if I can extend that question, how does this translate to the product categories and specifically around product categories with this demographics?
So there's a process to the whole sort of kitchen experience essentially. Where we've seen a lot of it happen is the biggest segments will be storageware, The biggest segments will be prepware and then tabletop. That is what happens on the kitchen side of the space. So definitely it is slow, but that change does happen. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it starts with prepware and storage.
That does, and I'll extend this question, Barry, to you for your specific category, given you are more in apparel. How does this translate to sort of growth in apparel overall in the demographic way?
So at some point of time, a couple of years back, we used to think that there is an India and there is a Bharat. There is a metro consumer, there is a rural consumer. The choices, tastes, preferences are way different for each other. But thanks to internet, thanks to the digital adoption, the smartphone penetration that has happened in India, it's the same consumer which is there. Now his choice, his lifestyle might keep on evolving, his fashion taste might keep on evolving because for them the markets, the periphery markets and the markets where they look up to keep on changing. So for the Bombay customer, he is going to London, he's shopping in Tokyo. For the person who stays somewhere staying in Jharkhand, probably he's coming to Bombay today, but once his aspiration levels go up, he's also going to Dubai. And their exposure levels to the brands and the products are the same. Men's fashion, if I take for example, and from a trend perspective, and you can get a lot of data points around that, is prints as a category has been doing well across, whether it is B towns, C towns. In fact, some of the trends are now emerging more in C class or tier 3 towns because there are early adopters on certain things. So over there, we don't see that, when we are designing a collection, when we are looking at certain trends and saying this is for a particular segment. I think you have to look for consumer cohorts, and these cohorts can stay in any part of the country.
Okay, and if I again extend that question, how does this translate when a foreign brand is looking at entering into India? The kind of entry vehicles they have to look at. Do they go around partnerships, JVs, licensing? And how do they decide what is best for them when entering the Indian market?
So I'll just answer this question in 3 parts. One is, what are the models that exist today? So in terms of model, there is a joint venture which is available. Second is a licensing route where you appoint a partner. It's an asset-light model, risk-free model. There are minimum guaranteed royalties. You just need to worry more about the monitoring process. The other is a distribution where somebody is buying off the shelf. It's short-term agreements that you look into. Or if the brand has a very long-term view, then you set up a wholly owned subsidiary, or you could like to test the market and use the e-commerce route. So primarily these could be 3-4 routes. The other thing which you have to consider, what are the challenges in this market? Now India is not a very easy market. While on the onset everybody talks about the growth, 7%, 8% growth that is happening, the consumer is very, very diverse over here. So from a city itself, if you go to Punjab, for example, every 20 kilometers, the dialect also changes. So if it becomes as diverse from that perspective. The regulatory framework sometimes can be very, very challenging and overwhelming for somebody. The legacy around some old technology being used, the adoption and all of that are cumbersome in nature. So for a brand which has to come into India, it needs to consider that what is the understanding of this market? Do I have the long-term investment and the patience capital that I have? Because this market is not just for today, it's for tomorrow. So you need to be invested in this market. The other thing which you have to do is, as a brand, you just can't say that I've signed a partner and I can leave it over here. In today's age, the consumer is looking at your global Instagram page, it's seeing what you're doing globally. So you have to invest in the brand. And the most important thing is to finding the right partner, because the partner whose value and vision should match yours, because no marriage will be successful if you go in for a short-term period.
Thank you, Barry. I'll take from what Barry was mentioning in terms of dialect changing every 20 kilometers. And as we say, India versus Bharat, Bharat is very granular. It changes within a city, within a state. And that, to Poppy, the question to you would be, Laura Ashley has a global legacy. How do you see in customizing it and sort of tailoring it to the Indian consumers' aspirations and needs, given the diversity within India itself?
I think it's really important that there are certain standards that a brand has to maintain, whether they're just within Europe or a global brand. That can be simple things just as a logo, and a logo on every single product that is manufactured under the brand, so the consumer really understands that it's a genuine product and it's actually coming from the brand, not just a local partner. But in terms of making sure that you localize the product. A brand is not going to succeed unless you take on the expertise of your local partner. And that's for us as a brand and many other global brands. You need to find a good local partner. So we have partnered here with Bradford Licensing, who have got boots on the ground in multiple cities as well, not just assuming that we can work from one city, and really understanding that it's not just about sizing. People may assume kind of you do a dress in a different size for a brand, but it's making sure the material is correct, the fit, maybe a market is slightly more conservative than we would be in the UK. And we've done this through a lot of other territories. So for the likes of our Japanese market, the fashion is quite different from what you would see in the UK. The UK is very print heavy, has a lot of fun with color. The Japanese consumer is more conservative, and actually a brand that has a global presence can do all of those looks, but there just has to be that underlying feeling of what makes something a brand. And we work very closely with our local partners, whether that's the manufacturer or a licensing partner, to not just say, oh, it's about color or it's about print or it's this print for this season. It's about feeling and what the end consumer feels. So you're absolutely right, that conversation on social media channels, it still has to have that global feel. So we will work, even kind of give our partners a dictionary of terms that we would use within the UK. Mm-hmm. So when it's somebody local writing an Instagram comment, they've still got that same tone of voice as we would have within the UK. But it's about working in long-term partnerships. And after we've worked with a partner for a year, they've got that tone of voice naturally anyway. And it's, you know, they can then educate their partners, sub-licensee, franchisees, and everybody kind of starts understanding where that brand's from.
Yeah, Anand, you want to...
If I may add, so I think on localization, the thing is that the consumer is going after an international brand for the international appeal. So going into localization too soon is probably also not going to be benefiting the brand. So when people are looking, they're trying to emulate what's happening outside. And when you're trying to emulate what's outside, you probably want to use that first and then come back into...
can you hear? No.
Better? Thank you. I think what I was trying to say, and I don't know where you lost me, but on localization, one of the reasons with international brands coming to India and Indian consumers buying international brands is for that international appeal. So if you try and get into localization too soon, too quickly, it's probably not going to help the brand. So what we've seen with some of our brands is, look, you've got your global bestsellers, you've got your regional bestsellers, bring on those products, because at the end of the day, yes, we are all Indians, we are different consumers, but at the end of the day, we're all consumers. So we are all different, but we're all the same also. So if the brand comes in with their bestsellers at a global level, brings that to India, and then slowly and steadily, once they've understood the market, then gets into the localization aspect of things, we've seen that work a lot better than trying to serve the customer need on day one. With some of the international brands, again, from our limited experience, sometimes even the customer doesn't know what they want. So the international brand is sort of helping educate the customer in terms of the need that the customer probably has, essentially.
No, I think that the last statement you mentioned, the customer does not know what they want, is very important. In a lot of work that we have done, the customer says something, but eventually if you observe their behavior, it is very, very different from what they were saying during conversations that we had with them. So that is very important. And I think, Barry, next I'll come to you in terms of, and in an earlier panel also, we were having a discussion around omni-channel and how digital is evolving in India. What are your thoughts in terms of digital/omni-channel? How is it going to grow? And how do brands sort of strategize around it to ensure they are able to leverage this trend going forward?
So when we started about 10 years back, at that time, you know, we used to be a SaaS company selling omni-channel solutions. It was a tough sell because online itself was, you know, at a very nascent stage in India. And we had seen that there were people, you know, who had done House of Fraser and stuff, had done fantastic work in terms of omni-channel. I would say this will be the route that will happen in India also. And there is a reason for it because we have seen consumers evolve faster than brands. Brands typically, it's very difficult for them. They become sometimes so huge for them to change. It becomes a very difficult process. And what also happens is that from a consumer perspective, you see, you shop brands. We all have our own choices of brands. Channels is a medium in which they buy from. It's not necessarily they want to shop online, I want to shop offline. We don't choose like that. We choose particular brands. That's our need. So a channel might be a need. I might be sitting at my home at the middle of the night. I want to buy something. I'll go online because I know the store is not open or it is not convenient for me to go somewhere. So I think it is always the choice of the consumer from that perspective. And omni-channel strategy is very, very critical. And that starts from the organization. In an organization, typically the way it's done is you have a retail team, you have a digital team. Now there itself, you have created a conflict in the organization because the retail team is thinking about their own targets, their own channel, and the digital team is thinking. So we also encountered, when we started signing brands, we encountered the same thing. And the first thing we did was, we started incentivizing our store staff for any getting digital orders in their catchment area. So rather than competing, sometimes you have to collaborate and saying the consumer is the same. Don't try to achieve your target and try to hamper the business, because digital has its own advantage. The discovery of the product, probably the first time buy, a lot of data analytics, reviews will come through digital. But the offline experience, which is today 85% of the business today, your engagement levels, your emotional connect will happen through the whole offline part over there. You will be able to build the brand. Now in India, unlike the West, especially in this case of fashion, the brands are not built on ramps. You don't have, the best of fashion brands being built. There are massive fashion shows. You look at a style, say, wow. Tommy Hilfiger, for example, which was launched by a previous organization, Arvind, was built by the beautiful product people saw in the store. So the store experience itself lend a lot for brands to be built in India. So it's not the choice today that you need to do online or offline. It needs to be both. Both have their own strength. And you should use data to, leverage these strengths.
I think that's a very interesting point you're making, that retail versus digital are not different teams overall. They are for the same business. And the targets, etc., that they are chasing should have some overlap. I'll stay with you for the last point that you made in terms of data. With digital growing in India and in digital businesses, how do you think companies, especially foreign brands entering India, can leverage data to sort of overcome some of the challenges that you face?
I think the way omni-channel works is you need to have a single view of inventory. Gone are the days where inventory should be siloed, respectively, for one channel or the other channel. So today, for example, if you go to any of the Lee and Wrangler store, that inventory is a global inventory. It's visible on online channels also, for offline channels. So you need to have a single view of inventory. The other is the consumer today is much smarter. You need to ensure your pricing, whether it's offline and online, needs to be same. Third is your product. You need to have a coherent product. You might have different lines, but you can't befool the customer. And we have done that mistake in the past because online discounting pressures, we tried to create a separate specific line and say we create an e-commerce value line for the customer. But the rating and reviews clearly showed us while consumer might be wanting a discount, he does not want a cheap product. He wants a product which is coming at a particular value for that, the money that he's spending. So it's very, very critical that you need to have use data, and that could be on a customer. What kind of customer is walking inside my store? What is the customer who's shopping on my online? Can you build cohorts on that? The pricing that you are showing, is it common pricing that you're doing? There are a lot of analytics that are available which needs to be harnessed to ensure that, customer is not cheated.
Got it. And Anand, I'll come to you on the same question in terms of digital, given you are in a slightly different category, a category that is still very close to the Indian consumer. How do you view online or omni-channel as a...
I wish I could say just let's listen to Berry, but it's exactly the same. It is essentially, if you want to think of it, it's the mother-in-law who will probably do offline, it's the daughter-in-law who will do online.
I think still we can't hear you.
Still? Okay, got it. Super. I'll say it is exactly the same. It's the mother-in-law who will go offline. It's the daughter-in-law who will go online. I was in Punjab, incidentally, yesterday, and I could see a mother-daughter combo walk into a store, and the daughter looks so unhappy it is not even funny. Because she didn't want to be there. She probably wants to be on her phone, look at it over there. The reviews are important. They'll look at customer reviews and all of those things. So it is absolutely important to have an omni-channel approach. And it's not just that bit. I think it's also the fact that some parts of India will have a more offline heavy presence. Some parts of India will be more online heavy. So if you look at cities like Pune, it'll probably be more online. Bangalore, probably more online. Delhi or the north will be more offline. So it also depends across that. So you have to have just a single face to the consumer. You have to have it omni-channel. They see everything like, exactly everything like Barry said. You know, they have to see everything everywhere. And when they start relating to that, that's when they'll go out and do that final decision.
Thank you. Poppy, I'll come next to you in terms of regulatory framework and government support when a foreign brand is entering India, given you are in the process. What do you think are the challenges from a regulatory front that a brand could face, and what more do you think the government can do in terms of either easing the process or attracting more brands in India?
It's very hard for different brands, different countries have different regulations. For us, actually, entering the Indian market has been one of the smoother kind of conversations, which is really positive for us. I think in terms of helping grow the brand and give brand exposure would be really the support. And also kind of supporting where we want to kind of invest in local manufacturing and giving that support to actually the people who are doing the manufacturing of the brands and helping support the branding. We haven't yet got to the point of launching products into the Indian market and that kind of brand protection element, but that can be a challenge when you're entering into new markets of, especially when you go further afield from your home territory, maintaining that kind of brand protection becomes a real challenge for us.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. I think I'll perhaps open the floor to the audience if they have any questions. Can we get a mic, please? Is there?
Hello, my name is Sameer. I represent a brand called Retail Bazaar, wherein we actually have onboarded all the various local retailers on board. So I just was listening to Sir, wherein you were saying about the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law concept. But what is your thought if a particular app is bought in? You know, because as it is, the online section has completely destroyed the local industries over here. The local retailer have gone. Especially recently, we heard that $1.2 billion of the Kirana industry is literally destroyed here in India as such. So if we have a particular product like that, wherein the local retailers can be put on board, and even in the previous few talks also, it was decided that the margins are very less and very competitive. So considering the fact of the volumes that we have here, we do not charge a commission, but at the same time, they end up delivering the stuff directly to the customers, directly to their doorsteps, and they pay them directly. And it's a subscription-based model. So would this actually, as per your esteemed knowledge in this specific retail industry, would help the local retailers to build up and actually create a very strong competitions for these monopoly organizations which are going through these online platforms as such, the giants?
Look, it's a good question. Also difficult because every business has a place. And as long as your economics of what you're offering to the customer, there is something different, something good for the customer there. I don't see why that should not be an opportunity, because there are players who've done this in the B2B space who probably then take care of the middle mile and the last mile. So in your case, if you're taking care of the first mile, middle mile, and last mile, I think there should be an opportunity. And this is the best part about India. There is demand is the least of our problems. As a consumer economy, demand is not the issue. Supply chain is probably bigger in terms of servicing the customer. So I keep telling my team the same thing, saying, customer mil jayega. We don't have to worry about that. It is about how do you find your customer, where is your customer sitting, how am I approaching the customer, and what value add am I giving that customer? Is that really there? So in the case of international brands, like all three of us are doing, we are bringing an international perspective to India. In your case, I think you are offering a local support, or you're supporting the local system and getting them to the customer. So there should be an opportunity. I don't know the details around it, but it doesn't seem illogical.
No, I mean, even on the online section, as we are onboarding the local retailers, when I say local, when you're talking about international brands also, in today's time, even the international brands also have their own franchisee models of shops, of the retail shops in different parts of the country. I mean, I'm even talking about the tier 2, tier 3 cities also in my research, which I have found out. So definitely, if they also come on board, and like how Myntra as a big brand is doing by giving clothes. So you can talk about anything under the roof in the retail sector, which can be presented, which can be delivered directly to the retailers, customers' doorsteps. Plus, because of it having an opportunity of the retail, of the customer negotiate, because India loves bargaining, let's be honest about it, right? So negotiating it and then getting the stuff delivered to the doorstep and paying at the same time. So in this sense is what I'm talking about, brands, non-brands, all of them under one platform.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's happened in the fintech industry. It's happened in the mutual fund industry. I don't see why it should not happen, why it cannot happen in the retail industry or the consumer space. I mean, like I said, I mean, if there is a consumer who is sitting there and is getting value add for the services you're providing, there is a business case to be made.
Just trying to go back to your previous question, you mentioned that, Kirana stores getting wiped off and all of that. The reality is some of us live in our cocoons, okay? We don't evolve as fast as the consumer evolves. So Blinkit, before it became Blinkit, was grofers. The model was they did not have any dark stores. They used to take inventory from small Kirana stores and publish it. The challenge was they were not able to fulfill the entire order for the consumer because the inventory was not in any POS system. The guy was maintaining a register or a very old archaic system of maintaining inventory. So when the consumer would place an order, only half the things were delivered to him. The model came and it had to be evolved. The guy said, I can't depend upon this retailer. While he's a Kirana guy, he's doing all the investment. I need to change from an asset-light model, because that's how Grofers started, to saying I need to create a dark store. I will keep the inventory because my promise to the consumer is most important. The point is sometimes you need to give a value prop, whether you're running a offline store, you're trying to create a platform where you want to bring different things, you need to create a value prop for this consumer. The disruption will always be there. When e-commerce was there, who thought that quick commerce would come and disrupt? E-commerce players were thinking that FMCG is their next big game because they have acquired the customer. The different need of the customer they're going to, harness upon. But that didn't happen and it went straight away to the quick commerce guy. So I think value prop is very critical, what you're offering.
Especially when you're talking about the local retailers, because one thing which I have seen, and I would like you to correct me if I'm wrong, which will help me in my in this particular journey as a business entrepreneur, that a lot of elderlies to the recent generations are not allowing them to run fast enough, as the e-commerce and all these divisions, because they say that like मेरा दादा करता था, मेरे पापा करते थे, मैं करता हूँ तो तू क्यों नहीं कर सकता? This is the response I've even seen from the local retailers also, those who are even dealing with brands as well. So don't you think that as a retail association or so also, there should be some sort of an education model provided to them so that, the growth, because that will equivalently help in the growth of the economy of the country as well.
See, the market is always the best teacher. When you're in a marketplace, you can see what is working, what is not working. The reality is what worked yesterday will never work today. And that's definitely not going to work tomorrow. So there is going to be a disruption. And disruption typically comes from outside because you are conditioned in a particular way to think all the time. So you need your new mindset. So if the grandfather or the father is telling the child, this is how you do. If, like, for example, I tell myself also, if what I studied, if my kid is also going to study the same thing and the way that I studied, then he is not ready for the world which he is going to face after 10 years, 15 years.
Any other questions for the panelists? We have a question here. Far right.
That'll have to be the last question.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, my question is for Ms. Poppy and Mr. Berry Singh. I work in the online commerce space. I run an agency called K-Log. And one of the biggest problems that brands face is size issues, like returns on sizes. So when you're bringing an international brand to India, how do you adapt to the Indian demographic, right? Because the figures are different, the sizing becomes a big issue because what works, let's say in UK or Europe might not work in India. So what's your thoughts on that?
Um, for us, that's quite simply why we work under this licensing model. We don't assume that we can have the same fit. So like you say, the numbers are different, but even the actual fit of product is different. But that goes through everything to bed linen. Even in Japan, we have the same range of furniture as we have in the UK. It's a little lower and a little smaller because the Japanese population have a smaller house and they are generally shorter. So that's the point of having that local manufacturer who understands those sizes. But there's also then a little play on that. Some consumers, like you said, because they actually want the international brand, they want to be able to buy UK bed linen and in the style you would buy in the UK. Well, then we have to make sure we also have someone who creates the filled product in India as well, so we can offer that full lifestyle opportunity for them. So there's two ways of doing it. It's either having enough partners to offer that full lifestyle brand in the fully UK version, or having some really good localized product that's done specifically for the market, but still keeping that brand aesthetic and brand value there in those products.
So for apparel, whenever we have launched an international brand, we would have typically seen that, if there are Asian specs, so if you're taking from Japan or Southeast Asia, that don't work in India because the body type is very different. If you look at the American sizes also, they also don't work, they're much larger. So typically we have seen UK is what works for India. Having said that, localization is important because you're selling it to the Indian consumer. It might be an international brand. So what we do is we bring those samples or products much before the brand is launched. We have fit models. We use a lot of data. We launch in simple, small sets, gather some data, do some variation in fits and sizes, present it. And then the cataloging part in the digital space and the education and training part in the offline space becomes critical. Sometimes you have to educate the customer that you have to buy one size smaller, one size large, and how well can use that data. And it's an iterative process till the time you hit bullseye, because if the product, especially in women's wear, if you don't get the fit right, then chances are you'll not be able to sell.
Right. That's exactly what I was asking. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, panelists Poppy, Berry, Anand, for this very insightful conversation. And thanks the audience for the questions that they asked. Thank you.
Thanks, Meet. Thank you, everyone.